Welcome to another episode of Comics and Sweet Tea. It's awesome to have you guys watching again. Can't be more proud of how the channel's doing. It's growing slowly but surely. You guys are starting to spread the word. Continue to do so. We're trying to grow this thing out and continue to bring you these awesome creators and just talk about what they're up to, their hopes and dreams, and their awesome projects most of all. And just a few announcements, a little bit of housekeeping up top. I will be at Fan Expo New Orleans, January 5th to the 7th. Really excited about that. That'll be my first show on the other side of the aisle. So, come hang out with me. Be awesome to meet you guys. Also, End of Days, Chapter 4 will be kicking off on Kickstarter February the 7th. That's right. We got a launch date. So the pre-launch page is up. Go and sign up where you can get notified and know exactly when the comic hits. And tell somebody. Tell somebody about the channel. Tell somebody about the project. You know, it has Kickstarter has an algorithm just like everything else. Numbers always matter. So the more sign up, the more eyes will be on this project when it actually launches. So any help would be very appreciated. And I've talked enough. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on an awesome creator, Stephen Lelito from the Lelito verse. He's got Box Boy and Whiskers, mathematician. I might not be right on that one, but we're going to bring him in and he can correct me. So bringing him in right now, we got Stephen right here.
What's going on, everyone?
So awesome to have you on, dude.
Oh,
Did I get that right on your projects?
Math magician.
Mathematician. I was so close. One letter.
It's a mathematician, math magician.
Yeah.
Read the story, you'll understand why that's necessary. So
I'm gonna have to check it out. I've seen some art from it. It looks really amazing.
yeah.
The one thing that really drew me in first off was Box Boy and Whiskers, man. Tell everybody about Box Boy and Whiskers. Where did that come from?
Like most of my ideas, just a joke taken way too far. I was writing these characters. They were actually in another comic series that I was making that didn't quite make it out there. I'll eventually release it, but it didn't quite make it out there. There were a lot of delays with the creative team. I didn't know what I was doing. Not to say I do now, but I do more now than I did before. And I just love the characters. It's a kid with a box on his head. Any kid can find a box. And then he has a telepathic cat companion. So they go on adventures. The way that I write the characters, they're super fun to write. They're funny. They're always getting themselves into something, and it's just a fun adventure comic, and anybody can enjoy it.
Awesome. And it's all ages, correct?
It's all ages, but I put an asterisk in there. Think
Okay.
about cartoons when you're watching like Rocco's Modern Life and
Gotcha.
yes, a kid was watching and it was fine, but there might be an adult who walks in and be like, is he understanding that? There's some underlying tones in there and some things that
Right.
are kids see it as a linear thing. Adults will see everything that's going on. So yes, it's all ages. Nothing inappropriate happens, but
Right.
definitely more than one would think. Definitely more.
Has a few adult themes. I got you.
Exactly. Just some mainly the undertones, like the not so obvious. I don't say things, but as you're reading it, you're like,
Yeah, I completely got you on that. And Math Magician. Tell us about Math Magician.
So Math Magician definitely goes more like towards the young adult crowd. Uh,
Gotcha.
it's the story of Melvin, who's a high school kid. His first appearance is in Box Boy and Whiskers. He's the Math Magician. Box Boy and Whiskers accidentally stumble upon this villain in their adventure. And then let's just say it's a little short lived. And everybody's just like, what's the deal with this guy? Where are we going with him? Well, his origin story is now in our Math Magician series, and it
Okay.
shows by little his transformation into this character.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So ha- you're on, is it issue 6 or issue 7 that you're in production on with Box Boy right now?
Issue 7 is going to be dropping at the beginning of next year.
Issue 7. Gotcha. So you're well into this thing. And as far as fleshing your world out, fleshing out the characters, you pretty much found your tone. That's one thing that was the hardest thing for me. You know, I knew what I wanted to do, but it kind of took me a couple issues to find my footing. You know, did you did you kind of run into that when you were working on Box Boy and Whiskers?
I mean, everybody does. Everybody
Yeah.
absolutely does. Um, I didn't know how universal I wanted to be at first. It
Right.
started with one idea, which hopefully we see next year. If you ever flip over one of my books, you'll see the logo for Lelito verse. That's actually the first character I created in the Lelito verse, but the last character probably everybody's going to see. When I was writing that comic, there were a lot of characters that I wanted to elaborate on, but that wasn't the intention. The intention was just to write comics because, like you just write comics. You just enjoy it.
Right. Exactly.
And then you grow up and you realize that hey, hobbies cost money, and I make money.
Definitely.
If I could do this for free, which I guess I kind of already do, um, then I would do it forever. And so now that I'm in a position where I can actually do it, somewhat professionally, um, yeah, I want to kind of put all of my ideas out there. I want to put as much content as I can out there with it all tying together. So, yes, I definitely ran into some things where I'm like, hey, how can I fit this character in while still keeping all the universe together? And that's why Math Magician's up next, because he was the most natural thing I fell into while writing Box.
Gotcha. It kind of happened organically, so to speak.
Very much, very much so.
Gotcha.
A joke I took way too far that I just kept.
Yeah, rolling with. Hey, and sometimes that's where the best material comes from. I mean, really. So you work with now do you draw these or do you have an artist that comes on and works with you on either one of these titles?
you know, I can actually very specifically answer this question. I was storyboarding before this conversation because I had a little bit of time. So
Gotcha.
I have these bad boys right here. My book of ideas.
Right.
All right. And Math Magician, just in particular, I storyboarded,
Okay.
and I'll show you what my general outlines for these things look like. This bunch of scribble scrabble, right? Bunch
Oh
of
yeah. Yeah.
um, and then I do what's a storyboard, and it's kind of like drawing a crappy version of the comic. And sure, maybe
Gotcha. Basically a thumbnail.
yeah. And then you have this,
Gotcha.
you know, and so I draw every single page in these comic books. But because I would never torture anybody and sell them my art, I actually hire art teams to draw them better.
Fair enough. Fair
Or
enough.
concept thumbnailer, if you will, is what I am.
Gotcha. Gotcha. But you've got a big part in it, in the art. I mean, you're laying everything out for him. You're taking all the guesswork out of it.
I want the artist to just draw. I don't want them to have to sit there and be like, crap, how am I going to do this? They can
Right.
add whatever flair they have. And if I'm hiring you as an artist, it's because I love your art style. I'm not going to say, hey, draw this.
Right.
It, hey, draw this in your style. Like, I clearly
Gotcha.
your style. I'm hiring you because I like your style. And if they want to throw a flair on there, absolutely. They know better than I do. These are the artists.
Right. Right. I got you. Now, what's kind of been one of the biggest, well, yeah, yeah, we'll go ahead and word it that way. One of the biggest challenges you've run into as a creator making your books. I mean, just in general, it doesn't matter You might have a different answer for both of them. Just kind of tell me where your head went as soon as I mentioned that question.
Yeah, I do have two different answers actually. With Box Boy and Whiskers, um, my answer to both questions is just getting it out there.
Right.
Is people interested, getting people to kind of take the idea seriously, because it's a comic book, and as popular as comic books are, they've kind of, I don't want to say fallen out of pop culture, but it's all about the movies. It's all about the shows. Like the actual
Right.
comic, I cannot tell you how many people have told me they still make comic books. There's comic shops.
Oh, wow.
There's people in their 30s, 40s who've never entered a comic shop in their life.
That's
That's
crazy.
right. I couldn't imagine not going to a comic shop. But so getting the word out that I was making a comic, and yes, it's serious and you should read it because I have a lot of pride into it versus, yes, I took a joke too far, but it's not that, like, this isn't a joke. This is actually something I want you to read. I think you'll enjoy it. That was probably the hardest thing to do. Um, I did a Kickstarter for Box Boy and Whiskers 1, and I think the hardest thing about that one was if you looked at every comic on Kickstarter, they were on the promiscuous side,
Yeah.
um, violent side. Cannibalism was trending like like nobody's business
Wow.
in 2021. Um, so I'm over here putting an all ages adventure story, and I'm like, are people even going to be into this? Because it's not anything that I'm seeing right now. So that was really tough. And then we have Math Magician, and I suppose the real challenge was, okay, now that I've kind of captured my like niche audience with Box Boy and Whiskers, we're stepping away from an action packed comic and we're going into something that focuses more on like drama.
Gotcha.
Can I keep these people? Am I getting a new audience? Like, can I have both? Like, can I have my cake and eat it too?
All right.
That's been a huge challenge too, because some people they might only be into Box Boy, then some people they might only be into Math Magician. So I'm entering that kind of. I'm glad for anybody who's interested in anything, but also, do you like this too? Like it's hard. It's
Yeah.
really challenging.
I gotcha. So, are both of these going to be ongoing titles, or do you have a planned end to your story arcs on either one of them?
So Math Magician's only going to be 4 issues,
Okay.
and longer than standard issues. So I try to be fancy and call them books. So
Gotcha.
book 1 through 4 be a complete story, because you'll see him more in the future of Box Boy and Whiskers. He's a Box Boy and Whiskers character, um,
Gotcha.
its own story, which does stand alone. If you've never read Box Boy and Whiskers, Math Magician will make sense. You can enjoy it, but the Easter eggs and the references,
It
like
helps to
you'll
dive into both of them.
yeah.
So tell me this: what working with other artists, what has kind of been a challenge you've run into working with an artist? Anything in particular that you kind of a wall you've run into there, or it's been a pretty good process?
With the artist I'm working with now, it's a great process. I mean, I've had my trial and errors.
Right.
I've worked with artists where it didn't really work out, and that's why I only have 2 projects versus multiple. But with Amari, who draws Math Magician, I actually kind of got to test the waters with him. I was a fan of his art. I had him draw some Box Boy promotional stuff. So
Gotcha.
he did a Box Boy Halloween print for me, a Christmas and a Thanksgiving print, which I recently posted the Thanksgiving one. He drew that for me last year, actually. So I was already kind of working with him. So I
Right.
kind of popped the question, like, "Hey, would you do a comic book with me?" And it's worked out. It's worked out really well. I was really spoiled when it came to Kron and Amalia, who do Box Boy with me, because they're a dream team. Like I talk to them more than I talk to my family. They're just good people. They have a lot of pride in their work. Everybody's super into the project. So when I
Right.
was Math Magician, I couldn't expect to win again, to where somebody's going to be super into the project that we're doing together. But I somehow struggled and got somebody who's very passionate with what he was doing, who took his style, which is like an anime Amazing Spider-Man-esque style, somehow combined really well, and was able to emote everything that these characters were feeling, and he did a really, really good job. I guess I've just gotten lucky twice.
Gotcha. You
Or it
caught lightning in a bottle twice. I got you. That's a rare thing.
feels that way, yeah.
So, if you could transfer Box Boy or Math Magician into another medium, say a live action, uh, cartoons, whatever, sky's the limit.
Um,
What would be your choice for either one of these titles?
100% animation. 100%.
Gotcha.
And the reason why, like an animation like cartoon style, is because when you have a main character being a cat, it's really easy to mess that up 3D or.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
I love how Box Boy and Whiskers things happen that can only happen in a comic book. And I feel like a cartoon is the closest thing to a comic book.
Right.
Like when you watch Looney Tunes, that stuff only happens in cartoons. Um,
Exactly.
really portray that in live action. I mean, you can, but it's not as glorious to me. So I definitely want it in a cartoon so I can keep that whimsical, just that magic of only in a comic book, only in a cartoon.
Right.
I would 100% choose that.
All right. So I ask everybody this one. This is the $1 million question. Why comics, man? What got you there?
Why comics? Why comics? Um, what started me was newspapers, if you can believe it. We would,
Gotcha.
we would get newspapers on our lawn. I'd bring them in, and I would immediately go to the comic section, and I would read Calvin and Hobbes, Mother Goose and Grimm, um, whatever I could find, and they just intrigued me. In elementary school, I ended up getting um, the actual collected editions of Calvin and Hobbes. So they had like them in the actual books, and I would read them, and I'd get them from the library, and I loved them so much that I would just start doodling my own little comics. And then I actually didn't make it to a comic shop until after I graduated high school. Quite frankly, like most people, I didn't really think that they existed. I didn't I knew they existed, but I didn't really think I could go to one. Like, hey, I'm just gonna walk into a comic
Right.
shop. It's kind of intimidating. It's kind of intimidating because you walk in and you have no idea what's going on, and the person who runs the shop, they have to be either the person who makes you a comic collector or never walk into one again.
Yeah. I
And
could say that.
there's that. I walked into a comic shop in high school because I wanted a Pokemon Adventures manga.
Oh wow.
I walked in there and I said, "Do you sell manga?" And he told me, "No, I don't do that here." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I left and I didn't come back because I was intimidated. Um, and then I ended up going because I wanted a comic to another comic shop, and it turned out that the guy just really wanted to help me out, and that was a huge impact of collecting comics.
Gotcha.
But as far as why comics has just always interested me. I love the medium. I love the way that it's, the panel by panel storytelling. Um, Again, Calvin and Hobbes being a huge interest. 90s Robin, like basically anything Chuck Dixon wrote in the 90s was just gold.
Oh, definitely.
Anything that Marv Wolfman was putting out. Um, these, they hit me in a certain way. I don't know. Like, I would rather be reading than watching TV. I'd rather be reading than, playing with toys. I always wanted to read, and that medium just won me over. Just,
Gotcha. So sorry, excuse me. So what would you say is the hardest thing about the medium as far as creating? And what would you say is the best thing about the medium?
well, I'll start with the best first because it's the easy
Okay.
answer. Um, I can't stop writing. I will be stuck in traffic, and I'll be like, hmm. I'll find, back of a receipt, a pen, and I'll start scribbling down an idea. Uh,
Gotcha.
I'll be in mid conversation with somebody, and I'll say, "Hey, I'll be right back." Start typing out an idea on my phone. that's something that's the most fun to me. And I wish that's all I had to do. I really do. Because the hardest part is doing everything that isn't writing, doing the marketing, doing the layouts and the graphic design, doing the um, storyboarding, doing basic
Right.
stuff that isn't just writing. Um, it's very hard. It's very difficult. It's very strenuous. There's a reason why I don't have 100 comics out versus what I have out, because they take a long time. It takes a long time. This better be a great idea, because you're probably not going to hold it in your hands for another year, and that's you being very lucky. Of you found the artist, you found the funding, um, you got enough people to be into it to justify it. Um, that's the hardest part, without a doubt.
Oh, definitely. I completely agree with that. Um, One of the biggest challenges I run into, which there's several, like you mentioned, but I mean, just finding the time, to sit down and do all these things. Plus, like you've said, just all the hats you have to wear. It's not like you're working for people used to say the big two. Now I'd say there's the big three. Image has carved its way out to
Oh,
where it's one of the major. I mean, it's right there with recognized with Marvel and DC, and has been for quite some time. I mean, yes, any creator can come in there if they want you to. If you've got something that that's they see a dollar sign on that they can make money off of, but you work at one of these, hey, you've got access to letterers, you got access to artists, you got access to colorists, you've got marketing. I mean, all that's taken care of for you. And you can concentrate on your niche, whether it be writing, art, whatever. Making your own books is tough because you basically have to do it all by yourself and and like you get an artist for hire to come in and do what you can't do, but it's still tough.
oh yeah. And what if the recruitment goes bad? What if
Exactly.
you get with somebody that you can't really trust? What if you pay them and they just don't deliver what you're looking
Right.
for? You're like, I can't work with this. I can't sell this, but I also, yes, I paid you for your time because it was still your time, but back to the drawing board with this one. Or then you start doubting your own idea. Like, is it even worth going with? So yeah, it's really discouraging, but thankfully, it's always worth it. like holding.
Oh yeah.
I'll never forget holding Box Boy and Whiskers 1 in my hand. It was one of the most special moments because it was a real moment of I can actually do this. This is actually like once now that I've done this, I will never stop because
Right.
I know that there is a payoff in the end. Because my goodness, writing about a kid with a box on his head and a cat, people are like, "Are you serious? Get a job." um, but seeing it, it's just very rewarding. And yeah, you almost forget about all the work that it took until you start.
You really do. Yeah. When you actually you said it's just special. When you hold that book in your hand and realize that wouldn't exist if you hadn't have done that. You just pulled something out of nothing, and made it a living, breathing thing, so to speak. I mean, of course, it's not alive, but I mean, in its own way, it is. I mean, a kid gets a hold of this, you've opened up a brand new world to them, and you're responsible for that. Nobody else but you. And that's the most special thing about comics to me.
I'll agree with you there. I'll absolutely agree with you there.
So, you mentioned all these other books. Now, do you have plans for more upcoming titles to grow out the Lelito verse, or you just kind of concentrating on these two titles for right now and getting them established?
Well, I have to focus on one thing at a time. Well, one thing at a time. That's funny. No, everybody watching this who knows me is like, you liar. um, I have to focus on crafting each project. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, there's a lot more when it comes to Lelito verse. Box Boy and Whiskers will be my ongoing. I don't plan on stop writing that anytime soon. I've written a lot of content for that. My artist is actually finishing up issue 8 as we speak.
Oh, wow.
So I try to be ahead with that one. I'm usually 1 or 2 issues ahead when it comes to Box Boy. I have a new Lolitoverse title that I'm hoping to launch next year, which will put me at 3. And then once Math Magician, the miniseries, is done, there will be another miniseries after that. So
Gotcha.
having too many comics out at once, I don't want to overwhelm people. I don't want to overwhelm myself, my bank account. So
Right.
there's a lot of factors in play there. But yeah, there's also some outside of Lolitoverse stuff that I am doing. I have a couple projects that are going on that I will pitch to publishers like Image or AWA or like Vault. Um, Obviously, I have the ones I want the most, and then I'll work my way down until I get the yes.
Right.
But I do have a handful of titles that have nothing to do with the Lolitoverse, nothing to do with these characters. They're their own stories. So I am working on those too. But yeah, just keeping it going, keep trucking along.
Gotcha. Gotcha. It's a grind for sure. I mean, uh, I run into it all the time. This last book, I wanted it out last year, the one I'm currently working on now. And I just, man, I'm balancing everything. I mean, it's tough. I've
Hey,
been, and of course, that's the one thing that I have to push when something's coming up, between family and work and life and, comics. Of course, comics has got to take the back seat quite a bit of a time, most of the time. There are certain times when something else can push and you can concentrate on your joy, you know.
yeah, but you have what you're on is it the 4th issue you're coming out with?
Technically fifth because I don't count. Sorry, I don't count. I don't count the prequel along with it. That I didn't ever know if I would be able to go back and do that, and luckily, I run into Matt Martin, and he's such an incredible guy, and he fell in love with my world, and he hit me up. We were just chatting, He's like, "Yeah, I want to do that." I'm like, "Do what?" And he said, "Yeah, your prequel. I want to draw that."
That's
He said,
cool.
"You write it, and I'll draw it, and we'll kick this thing off." And yeah, we got the prequel out. So technically, this will be the fifth book, but fourth in the ongoing story, because the prequel kind of jumps back a ways. I kind of George Lucas this bitch. I kind of went with. I had this huge story that I wanted to do, and I kind of just took the best part of it because I want to put my best foot forward first, and then kind of go back and fill in the holes.
Nice. It's a successful module. I mean, you're seeing a lot of people trying to kind of replicate that. So, I mean,
Yeah,
that's amazing. A lot of times you only have 1 issue or even the first few pages to show anybody anything. So
exactly.
most people, they're going to look at the first page, and if they're not drawn to turn the page, they're going to put your book down and tell you good luck. And they're going to walk away.
Definitely. Definitely. So you've been doing the con scene for quite a while, hadn't you? With Box Boy and Whiskers, or just the
It
last couple of years?
it feels that way, but my first con wasn't until 2022. Oh my god, last year. Last year was my first con.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
I was busy this year. I
Yeah.
was busy this year, but last year, geez, I think it was July or August of last year was my first ever con.
Okay. Well, hey, you know, I'm fixing to hit my first. I've been making books since 2021, and this is the first time that I've been able to actually be off for a big con and, get to do it, So I'm super stoked. Any
That's
advice? Any advice for the cons?
learn from your mistakes, man.
Gotcha.
um,
Gotcha.
just get people don't think that you can sit there and people are going to just run up to you and throw money at you. You have to bring them in. I mean,
Right.
you're super chill. You have a really cool, just a great first impression of talking to you. You're super chill, so people are going to be drawn to that. Once you get them to your table and they're talking to you, they'll hear you out. They'll hear what you have to say.
Gotcha.
Have to still bring people to your table. And if you can figure out, there really isn't a correct answer for that one, but if you can figure out how to get people to your table, then I think you're going to do really, really well. But if you only rely on people coming to your table, sure, it could be, it could work out, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Gotcha.
Because
You gotta get out there and kind of beat the bushes.
yeah, yeah, without being like a pushy salesman, because nobody at that con wants it. Nobody at nerd cons wants a pushy salesman, that's for sure. But
Right.
that's kind of what I learned. I had my comic book and I was just kind of like all giddy and ready, and I'm like, nobody's coming over here. So I had to figure out how to get people to come over to my table.
Gotcha. You gotta find a hook. I gotcha.
Yeah. Because once they're there, if they're interested, they're interested. Very rarely am I selling somebody and they're not interested at all, and then they're like, "Oh, cool, that thing you said makes me want it." It's usually, "Okay, I'll hear what you have to say because I'm kind of interested." "Okay, cool, I'll
Right.
take it. Now I am." Versus, "Ill comic books. Oh, cool. Now I like you." I don't know.
I gotcha.
Ill.
I mean, I completely get that because I mean, I can think back going to cons and stuff and just kind of roaming through Artist Alley. Of course, you've got the list. You're have to meet. The reason you went to the con to begin with, you got to hit those lines early. But then you kind of once you check all the boxes on that, you're just kind of roaming through Artist Alley. And people that just sit there and give you that blank stare. I mean, I don't know your book. I don't know your character, and you're not really selling it for me. You're
Yeah,
sitting there like a knot on a log. The ones that kind of, hey, man, hey, you like such and such? Get on over here and take a look at this. You
that's another.
know,
Most people who are going to visit your table are either going to just get there, which means I need to take care of all my business first,
right?
um, but I'll keep you in mind, and hopefully they do. Or they're going to be kind of burned out because cons are, as fun as they are, they're tiresome.
Oh God, yeah.
Waiting in lines, and you realize that you haven't eaten, so now you're scrambling to get food, and as you're
Hmm.
food, some guy's trying to sell you their comic, and you're like, wait, hold on, I just need anything in my system right now. Um,
Right.
so you're gonna see a lot of people like that where they're kind of burned out, or they're on their last dollars. They only have so many dollars left, and are those dollars going to you, or are those dollars going to somebody else? So there's a lot of factors at play. I,
Gotcha.
one of the coolest things for me was seeing this person go up to my booth. Geez, three separate occasions, because there's one con that I do every time because I love it so much. It's the Front Row Card Show here in Vegas. I love that.
Gotcha.
I will do it every time. If you're ever in Vegas, man, get a table there.
Definitely.
Yeah, let me know and I'll try to get you in. But
Awesome, man.
but it took this guy his third time there to be like, all right, you're still doing it. I'll take him.
You wore him down.
He bought the entire set.
Oh
And
wow.
I had like 4 or 5 issues out, so it was pretty wicked. But
Yeah.
he would always look at him and kind of look at him like, and then he'd walk away. So in my opinion, I'm like, what did I do to hurt him? Like, I'm so sorry, but I just kept doing it, and one day he's just like, I'll take all of them. You're still doing it. There must be something special about it. So there
Right.
are those type of people too, which just keep doing.
I you hit on something right there. I think it really helps. People they don't want to go they don't want to invest in a flash in the pan kind of, thing. I mean, Marvel, look at Marvel and DC. They're rebooting every 6 months now. Fans are burnt out. You know, they don't know who to put their trust in anymore because Marvel and DC are constantly for lack of a better term, fucking up their characters after all this time, and I could see where people don't want to invest in somebody that might just have, say, one or two issues. Now, you said he waited till you had a handful of issues out. He seen that you were serious, and then he dove in with both feet, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing. People are just tired of getting crapped on by creators.
Yeah.
They don't have time to invest in a story that's not going anywhere.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're a fan of Mark Miller. Are
Oh
you?
God, yeah.
I
Yeah.
was, it's kind of a dumb question, but Mark Miller, I love. He actually has been talking about this on multiple podcasts, including his own, where he says DC and Marvel need to do well for comics to do well,
Yeah.
because
He's right.
if nobody's coming into their comic shops, then people aren't interested in comics, which means you, who some people might not have heard of, if they're not even going to go up to you if you're selling comic books. They're not into comic books. So many
Right.
people gone up to me and they're like, "This looks cool, but I don't like comic books." And I say, "Oh, okay." And hopefully they can get a sticker or a print or something. But
Right.
the fact of the matter is that they really like the character. They love how it looks. They'll go up to me and be like, "Wow, like, do you draw this, or who's your artist?"
Yeah.
Wow. I don't read comic books, and that's the end of it. They just, you can tell them all you want, like, "Oh, hey, perfect place to start. You don't have to know anything to enjoy this. It's its own universe." And some
Right.
people, but a huge amount of people just say, "Where would I put it? I don't have the space." And now you just sound like a salesman. Well, yeah, I don't know. You're just like,
Yeah. Well, what about your? Hey, you can order shelves all day on Amazon. Yeah.
questions, but at the end of the day, if you're not into comics, you're not into comics. But
Right.
when you find that comic that you like and it gets you going, like for me, I liked comics my whole life, but let me tell you, when DC Rebirth started, to me, I was like, okay, now I can maybe enter collect.
Gotcha.
And I read Nightwing Rebirth by Tim Seeley,
Yep.
and
That was a good one.
no going back. No going back. I have not missed a comic Wednesday since that book dropped. I
Wow.
I have not been able to, because I used to not know when they came out. I knew nothing. I didn't know comic books came out on Wednesdays. I didn't know what monthlies and periodical. I didn't know what these were. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
Imagine when I found out variant covers were a thing. I said, why would I pay the same amount? like, but yeah, it was just that. Honestly, it was that one really really good comic book that kind of made me think, okay, what else is this good? And I was searching for something to be that good. So somebody will find that, and then they're going to be all over the comics, and that could be your comic that gets them into comics like that. And
Right. Right. That's a
that
good point, man. Now let me ask you this.
yeah.
You mentioned that. What made you gravitate to that one book?
Um,
Was it a cover or just something that looked really cool about it?
it was, interestingly enough, it's kind of a little bit of a drawn out story, but I'll make it short. I was in a place called Buybacks. They sell used DVDs, used video games, all this stuff. Do they have those out there?
Something similar, just different. Yeah. Yeah.
I was in there, and my son was 3 at the time, and he's just walking around picking out movies. And the lady at the register said, these are buy 3, get 1 free, right? You want to just pick out a free movie? So I told my son, knock yourself out, buddy. And he just zips to the back. He picks out a movie, and it's Batman, Bad Blood.
Gotcha.
I'm looking at it, and I'm like, buddy, I don't know if this is appropriate for you, because it just looked really adult.
Right.
Like it was a cartoon, but like mature cartoon, if you will. But I wanted to watch it, so I bought it anyway, and I watched it. And in that movie is Nightwing, and I wasn't as familiar with his character as I thought I was.
Gotcha.
He's my favorite thing ever. I love Nightwing. Everything. If Nightwing's on it, I'm buying it. Like that's DC won in that regard for me. So I saw that comic, and I'm like, hey, that's the guy from that movie I watched. And that, as silly as it sounds, that's what got me to pick up that book. but I read this comic and it was better than the movie I watched. That's for sure. And I couldn't stop. I just could not wait until the next issue came out. It was like celebrating. It was like a holiday came out when this book was out in particular. So
Right.
that's what made me think, okay, what else? And then I slowly started expanding on titles, and
Gotcha.
that's where I am now. I have a problem.
I've been collecting. Oh my God. Which of course there's been stages in my life where I had to kind of put it on the back burner and I got out of comics altogether. But I always gravitate back to it because I absolutely love it. You know,
Oh yeah. How long have
and
you been collecting?
shoot, I've been collecting. Uh, 35 years. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
Now that's like I said, there's been several multi-year breaks in that 35 years, but depending on what was going on with the family or job situations or just whatever. But I always find my way back into comics. You know, a lot of people, I talk to on here, well, I don't collect any comics from the big two. I can't help it, man. I mean, there's still those titles that I gravitate to.
Hey, they're still good. I mean, don't get me
There's
wrong.
still some good books out there.
I mean, come on. You think Image only has good books? Like everybody has their flops. Everybody does. And maybe it's not a flop for maybe it's a flop for you, but not for somebody else.
Right, right.
Who's to say a lot of these big two titles that you and I aren't into? I mean, they cater to somebody. Somebody's enjoying.
Yeah, or they wouldn't keep making them.
Yeah, like
Somebody's buying them.
there's some market, and so I can't really be mad, because even when they start making bad Nightwing comics, which please, I'm not willing that into the universe, but even when they start making bad Nightwing comics, I mean, I still have a lot of good Nightwing comics. I want them to. I want it to be about me. I want DC to be like, what does Steven like, and just only make books I like, sure. But I know that it's not going to be that way. I'm not the only crowd that they have. So when people say they don't read DC and Marvel, to me that's like saying that you don't love comics. Like
Right.
that's
But
a,
because without DC and Marvel, we really wouldn't have comics.
a lot of
You
your
know?
comic writers you only know because of DC and Marvel. It
Right.
was give them all the training wheels, like James Tynion the Fourth.
Oh,
I
he's amazing.
I right, and I would say his indie stuff is better than his.
Oh God, yeah. Something's
But
killing the children. I'm still on that title.
yeah,
That's one I get delivered every time, man. I'm signed up for that one. I'm not going to miss an issue of that. I
yeah.
love that title.
World Tree. I tell you how many people I recommended World Tree to. World Tree was just fantastic. It was so good. So, but how did I hear about him? I read his Detective Comics run. I loved his Detective Comics run. I loved it so much that I said, "What else has he written?" And then I read The
Right.
Wood, and then I loved The Woods, and then I'm like, "Okay, well, what else has he written?" And then DC made him, through every project that they could think of at him, and he was just never letting me down. So now, like, yeah, I'm a James Tynion fan, like to the max. Like I'm gonna get everything that he puts out.
He's done
Regard,
some amazing work.
yeah,
The one that got me on him was Justice League. He didn't start out with that. He kind of co-wrote with was
Scott,
it Snyder?
yep,
Yeah, Scott Snyder. And then Scott just said, "All right, you're doing good. Here you go." And I
hmm
think the book actually got better after Tinian was on it by himself. I
yeah.
mean, honestly.
It's a solid run. I'm not even into Justice League. I'll be very honest with you. Like I've never really been interested in those characters enough to collect them periodically. But
Gotcha.
I collected that series. I absolutely collected that series because the writers were doing such a good job. I loved everybody on that book. The art, whew, art's incredible on those books.
Jorge, man, Jorge has become the modern day Jim Lee. I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
And he's doing so, I mean, it's simple stuff, but he's doing it in such a way. It's amazing how much his style's developed, just in the last couple of years. I mean, these blurs that he throws in there, I mean, he knows exactly where to put them, and it just adds so much to a comic. I mean, it's like watching a cartoon,
It
I
is.
mean, really.
It is. Even when I don't enjoy the issue of Batman too much, like every once in a while we get an issue of Batman where we're like, eh. But the art,
Oh
I
God.
I
Yeah.
I never regret buying an issue of Batman if Jorge Menez is drawing it. I just never,
Right.
because I won't even read the words. I'll flip through that like, wow, like then just look at the sequential art. It's amazing.
Exactly. That would be like walking through the Sistine Chapel for some folks. That's the way I look at Jorge's work. Just
It's good, man.
basically every issue's like a Sistine Chapel. You know.
It's a lot of love and detail go into it. It's
Oh God, yeah.
you watch artists get lazy, and I'll never be mad. Those deadlines are ridiculous. I couldn't imagine being that good at drawing, but if
Right.
somebody's like, "Hey, here's not as much money as you're worth to do way too much work that you don't have time for." Yeah,
Exactly.
corners. I'm never mad when I see it, but it still upsets me just a little bit that they somebody can think it's okay to spread them that thin, I guess you can say. Or they need to be spread that thin because artists, not every artist is rich. Their talent doesn't determine how much money they make, sadly. It's how much work they're actually getting and who they're working for, and how much they're actually making for it. So that's a rough subject in its own.
Gotcha. So tell me this. You mentioned Mark Millar a while ago.
Mhm.
Did you happen? I know it sounds like you keep your finger on the pulse of comics too. So, what did you think about his comments a while back as far as um 50% royalties? What do you think about that? Was it 50%? I want to say it was 50% royalties or something along that lines that he was suggesting the big two offered creators to bring them back into the fold.
I think if you've earned it, yes. If you've earned it and if the money's there, well, the money is going to be there. The money's
Oh,
at,
definitely,
I,
definitely. They're going to sell. You get those super. I mean, you think back, just say 20 years ago or 30 years ago. You think back when you had Chris Claremont and Jim Lee on X Men for crying out loud. That's still the best selling comic of all time. X
still,
Men number X Men number one.
yeah,
Millions of issues.
over,
But
yeah,
yeah, because of that the superstar team up on that book, and
yeah.
that's what he's talking about, bringing the talent back in and putting those awesome writers with those awesome artists. I've been saying they've been needing to do this for years,
There's a
not as
reason.
far as the royalties, but bringing back those awesome team ups.
Yeah, there's a reason why facsimiles are the best selling comics of today. Like, have you noticed how many facsimiles DC and Marvel are putting out right now?
I haven't even paid attention to it.
Go go to a comic shop. Go tomorrow. Go today, and just look at how many facsimiles are out. There's a facsimile. They've reprinted everything they sell. They reprinted Detective Comics. They've reprinted Batman One. They've reprinted Batman 404. They've Batman 5. Like all of these things are just reprinted, and people buy them because
Wow.
they're cool. And then they throw a foil cover on it, and that's what's selling right now. And there's a reason why they sell. They sell because they're good. They sell because they're iconic. They sell because there's hype on them. So if DC and Marvel want to say that they can't afford something like that, like yeah, I'm not their accountant. I don't know, but I think the surprise and the response to everything will shock them. I think when they're selling comics in the millions again, they'll say, "Okay, well, we can afford to do this."
Right.
For sell an issue of I don't know, Batman or Justice League and you're not selling nearly a million copies of that. I mean, the average, what I was looking at for 2023 sales, beginning of this year, the average book that does well is only in like the 15,000, maybe 20,000 range for
Yeah.
comics. And don't get me wrong, I would love if Box Boy sold 20,000 copies. I'd be to the moon.
Oh God, yeah. But
But
you think of Superman only selling 15,000 copies, and that's mind-boggling.
you can sell 1 million copies of Superman. Come on,
Yeah,
put your best. I mean, they have they have the artist on Superman right now. Let me tell you, but they should always have their best. You should have
definitely.
not you don't need a college degree, but you need like the equivalent of like comics degree and reputation and like the groundwork. I think you should have to really earn working on Batman and earn working on Spider-Man and X-Men. You should never pick up an X-Men book and say, "Who's this? Who's this writer?" Never.
Right.
You have to earn that stuff. Like me, I don't deserve to write X-Men. I love X-Men. I love X-Men so much, but I don't deserve to write it. One day I hope I do, but I don't deserve it right now.
What'd you think about Hickman's run?
Oh, like Powers of X, like
Yeah,
how I got to tread lightly with that subject, but I love it. I loved it so much.
it
I
got me. I hadn't bought an X comic in years till he jumped on that title.
so you liked it.
Oh, I loved it.
Okay, good. It's rough. It's rough when you hear because that's considered controversial in comics these
Oh,
days.
definitely,
Like, do
definitely.
you X-Men? I loved it. I loved it so much. Man, there's some I've recommended that to so many people too. I actually got somebody hooked on X-Men comics because I didn't give them a choice. I was just forcefully being like, "You need to read this. You need to read this," and he finally did. Stop.
Gotcha.
Man, that's one of my favorite things to come out in recent years, without a doubt. And even a few titles after that, like Marauders and
Yeah.
Hellion, solid X-Men titles. Let me tell you.
Well, I mean, they put the fun back in it. You didn't know everything was wide open again. You didn't know where it was going to go.
It's,
It breathed a new breath of life into the X Men world.
yeah,
I mean, anything felt possible, and they did some crazy stories. But you know, I don't think anybody has been that. Let's say brave. Let's use the word brave with writing an X Men title since Claremont.
yeah, that would be. I'd have to really think about it, but I definitely wouldn't argue with you. It's introducing new things, and one thing I loved about Jonathan Hickman's run too is he took all of the characters and just wrote good stories with them versus first appearance, first appearance, first appearance, first
Right, right.
all that. We're getting a little too much of that. A first appearance book doesn't mean much in 2023.
No,
But but let me tell you, he gave X-Men fans new stories with the characters that they loved. We got to see them in Captain Kate Pride. That's that's my one word, my one sentence answer. Captain Kate.
gotcha.
That's it. You watching people grow, watching the the true potential being reached of these characters, which is amazing.
Right, right. And you know, nobody's done that in years. It was not. It was really nice to see. You know, because X Men that used to be the bread and butter, man. I mean, that's where the money was. Everybody wanted to be on the X titles or Spider Man. That's I don't care what anybody says. That's Marvel's flagships. I mean, yeah, Fantastic Four, awesome. That's Marvel's first family, but they don't hold a candle to the X Men in my book. I love the Avengers, I do, but the X Men, that was it. That I loved X Men.
I'm biased. I just love X-Men. X-Men has always drawn me. Kid growing up in the 90s, what did we have?
Oh yeah,
What did we have? And then even the FX movies. Like I
yeah.
remember those, and those were just so cool to me. Um, it was hard not to be an X-Men fan growing up. Like if you were born in the 80s or 90s especially, like you can't just not like X-Men. It would be almost weird to
Oh
say.
yeah, criminal. It'd be criminal not to because I mean, everywhere you looked, you had X Men. You had the '90s cartoon. You had the X movies. You had
Games.
yeah.
The
I mean, it was everywhere, man. I mean, everything was just right, and I don't know if we'll ever get back to that. You know, I don't know if Marvel. I hope they will. You know,
I,
I hope they'll start putting that much attention back into the books because you said it earlier. All they're worried about is the movies. You know, Quesada, when he first took over as editor in chief, you know, at Marvel, he did Marvel Knights, and those were some amazing stories.
yeah,
And as the years went by, you've seen the money get to him, and it might not have, but you know what I'm saying. You
yeah,
get used to that, and you kind of lose your love for it, you know. And he just kind of faded into the background. I
yeah.
think they really need to find that one person that has that love for comics again and put them back as editor in chief at Marvel. And you know,
But also just let them do their job. Like, let them do it.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
trust
let them go.
it and don't step in their way. I feel like there's a little bit too much micromanaging. There's either micromanaging or no managing right now.
Right,
It clearly shows in the comic industry because it's like, why are you letting this person get away with this? Like, don't you hear what people are saying? Like, people don't want this to happen, but you're letting it
right,
happen. Or you're oblivious to it happening, which is to me the biggest crime ever. You're an editor and you're oblivious to what's out.
yeah, that's
Huh,
insane.
that doesn't sound like an editor to me.
No,
That sounds
and
LD.
I read something the other day that put I couldn't help it, man. I was sitting there reading it and it put a big old smile on my face. Vertigo is coming back to DC. That, you know, that lit me up.
It should have never left.
Should you said it. Should have never left. I mean, good God, man, some of the books that come out of that, some of the stories, the
my
talent,
my favorite
it's
comic
incredible.
on Vertigo. My favorite comic ever made is on Vertigo, and that's Transmetropolitan. Have you
I
read
like that book. I
that?
do like that book.
That's something else, man. I don't feel like it's been topped. I don't know if we can top it, but that's Vertigo.
Yeah.
Vertigo. You can expect books like that on Vertigo. You can
Yeah.
expect the weird, um, something new, something refreshing.
Right. They took some big swings.
Yeah. If I can ask you, what do you have a? Could you say you have a favorite comic of all time, or
Oh God.
I don't mean to stress
One
you.
issue or a run in particular?
You can do both. I'll allow both.
Oh
I'll,
God. Damn, that's a toughie. I have so many favorites. Um, God, that's not an easy
no,
question. Let me think. Let's see. Probably, mm, the favorite run's probably going to be a tie.
ooh,
I kind of have two that sit at the top of my list. I liked X Men, Uncanny X Men. Um, Probably Claremont's Dark Phoenix Saga is probably one of them. The original, not the movie. We're talking comics, people. This is a comics run.
we're
Yeah,
talking
Dark Phoenix.
181 and on,
Hmm.
like Uncanny X-Men, like 181 and on type
Yeah,
deal. Yeah,
yeah. Up
gotcha.
through the end of that, through there, and the other. Oh God. Let's see. Hmm. I almost said one that's not really. Probably the Dark Knight, Frank Miller.
Okay, like Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah,
Okay,
Dark Knight Return. Yeah,
they're classics for a reason, man.
yeah.
They're
And I liked the year one, the year two, and the year three. I mean, there's so many, man. I've got so many favorites. I the Frank Miller Daredevil run. I mean, the death of Elektra and Bullseye and all that. I mean, God, dude, there's so many fantastic runs out there. I mean, it's hard to pick.
still talking.
Favorite book of all time? Oof, that's a toughie. I don't think I can answer that. I have too many favorites. I'm gonna throw that question back to you.
Well, I prepared for because the one question that I can never answer is the one I just asked you. I can never answer that question. And to prevent to prevent me being like, oh no, I can honestly say Transmetropolitan is I think it's the best written comic. I don't think many can touch that one.
Yeah,
As far as go, my favorite ongoing comic series would be Robin by Chuck Dixon,
that's a
and
good one.
or I have every issue of that, man. I loved every second of that. It was just so, like, the character developments, the sense of adventure, but the sense of, you were always confident in Tim Drake, but you also knew his limitations, and it made things interesting. It made things scary. He was a little naive.
Right.
It was just so brilliant, man. So brilliant. So I have to say that one. I have to say that one. And then, of course, Calvin and Hobbes being my favorite of all time. Calvin and Hobbes is just something else.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. My cousin, he's a huge Calvin and Hobbes fan, and which I loved them too. Don't get me wrong. Peanuts was always my strip, though. I loved Snoopy.
Yeah.
Loved it. That's the one I always gravitated to, as a kid, and probably one of the first characters I ever drew as well.
Do you,
Snoopy.
that's cool.
Yep. But yeah, it's amazing, how we've come from that, comic strips to making comics, you know. So I've kept you long enough. I know you work all the time. I'm not going to keep you from your family anymore. I really appreciate. It was such a pleasure to sit down and talk with you, Stephen.
No, it was. I appreciate you having me on. I love what you're doing here. Like I told you before, I actually, I was really happy that you asked, because I do watch, your channel, and the conversation.
Appreciate that, man.
You get to learn about new creators, and it means a lot. It means a lot. You already know this. You share the same sentiment as I. So thank you for
Oh,
that. Really appreciate it.
thank you, sir. So hey, plug your stuff, man. Tell everybody where they can find you, where to follow you, where to get your books, everything.
Yeah, lelitoverse.com. That's my website. You can subscribe to my mailing list, which is free. And I also sell my comics on there, pins, buttons, other merch on there. And then at Lelitoverse on Instagram, I'm the most active on Instagram. You'll see me post on there the most. It sometimes bleeds to the other platforms too, but those are
God,
my, at Lelitoverse on Instagram, lelitoverse.com. You'll never miss a moment.
there you go. And hey, when this thing airs, all you'll have to do is look down in the description. I will have these links up down there to make it easy for you, because I don't want any excuses. Go follow this guy, get his books, support him any way you can. Stephen, it was a pleasure, man. Great show. Great show. I definitely want to have you on again to talk about Box Boy and Whiskers some more, and Math Magician. And I can't wait to hear what you got coming down the pipe, man. Best of luck to you with all your endeavors. Uh, that's the show, guys. Oh, hold on. One more time. I'm going to tell you again. Ring the bell, the little notifications. Please drop a like and a comment. Hey, this means all the world to this channel. And it don't take but just a second. All you have to do is reach down and hit it. Hey, you want to give me one of them? That's fine too. I'm trying to get one of these though. I'm doing the best I can. So give it to me. Helps helps with the algorithm. I hate algorithms. So you guys help me out. Now, that's a show. You guys have an awesome day. Such a pleasure, Stephen. We'll do this again soon. All right. That's the show, guys. Have a blessed one.
Too, buddy.